You ever listen to K. Billy's Super Sounds of the 70s? We're doing Reservoir Dogs, starting with a review with absolutely no spoilers. Then we're going to get into a thought section where I'm going to be spoiling everything about the movie. And let's see, the movie's rated R, so will this video be. And yeah, I fucking love this movie. That's right, we are doing motherfucking Quentin Tarantino. So let's see. I do not currently have access to 4 rooms, but I should be able to do, right, and Death Proof. Should be able to do everything else that he's written and or directed that I haven't already done at least one video on. So, starting with this, and the last one I want to say is Inglourious Basterds. After that one, I have done, the ones after that I did when I watched them in the theater. Yeah. Let's see. I think we will start with, so the yeah, I will acknowledge Quentin Tarantino in some ways problematic. I have discussed that in other videos, including videos on his movies. I am not sure I'm gonna be discussing it that much in this one. Yeah, I don't. We'll see, I guess. But yeah, this is an absolutely incredible debut. It's really no wonder that he got, like, not everybody gets a career after their debut, and yeah, like, just, I think I'll start by noting. So there was a while where there were people who I hope stopped since. Maybe I'm just not paying attention to them anymore, but there were people who thought that they, like, caught Tarantino ripping off other movies. And, there was this, like, I think this guy made 2 videos called "You're Not Fooling Anyone, Mr. Tarantino," and "You're Still Not Fooling Anyone, Mr. Tarantino," something like that. And he would show clips from movies and then show a clip from a Tarantino movie and say, see, it's, he, he ripped this movie off. And yeah, I hope that we eventually manage to just convey that, listen, I'm not interested in defending someone who rips other people off. Not in the slightest. I think when it comes to media, you try to make something that is yours. And if you simply can't make something that is 100% yours, get permission and make it clear that you're using someone else's shit. The thing with Tarantino is sometimes he'll take inspiration from movies that are very well known. He took some inspiration from The Thing. That's not a fucking obscure movie, though I'm sure a lot of people, yeah. There's some people who haven't watched it, their loss. But by and large, yeah, he'll take inspiration, and a lot of it, maybe especially in these early ones, he's taking inspiration from, like, shit you probably haven't seen or even heard of. Like, I remember watching that video in, I want to say, the early 2000s, and it was like, I didn't even know this fucking movie existed. And then you watch the examples, and it's like, well, he didn't really rip off. It's just a reference, dude. It's like, and that's the thing. Like, when you watch a Tarantino movie, if you've watched the movies that he's referencing, like, I'd like to think the majority of people who did realized, oh, he's one of us. This is a fucking film nerd. Like, he likes these B-movie schlock shit that, like, the mainstream doesn't know exists, He has referenced countless movies that I never even, and it's not like, Most of them I haven't watched since either, but the fact that he's watched them and like puts references in, I fucking love it. You know, I don't know all of them, so I'm not saying for sure, but I don't I don't recall personally being exposed to evidence that he actually ripped off. And I'm not saying that he like handles everything perfect. Absolutely not. I am not the right person to discuss the how he when it comes to African American culture, you know. But he really doesn't. Maybe it's out there, but I don't recall. If I've seen it, I must have forgotten about it. But yeah, what I've seen is just him taking inspiration, and yeah, you know, this was one of those movies where, you know, in on the DVD, on at least some DVDs, my DVD has this 9 minute something introduction by Tarantino, and he notes, you know, he used to work in this like what the fuck's it called, movie rental place, and he would do like themes. And one time he did a heist movie theme, and he was like, "We haven't gotten a new heist movie in a while. I guess I'll make one," you know? And it's so fucking cool because after this, we did actually get like some of the best heist movies were made after this one and might not have been possible if not for this one. You know, we might live in a world that did not have Inside Man, you know, and I'll acknowledge not everybody loves duplicity, but I do think it has a lot to offer. Just, yeah. And obviously, to be clear, I try to check my recency bias. I fucking love classic heist movies. You know, yeah, the older heist movies are some of the best heist movies. Obviously, it's very difficult to top some of them. But yeah, and he made a heist movie that in some ways is very different from pretty much any other heist movie I've ever watched. And I am not going to be giving away exactly how before I start talking spoilers. And another thing about this movie is the 1990s were a time where we were starting to get this kind of postmodern. You had media that was commenting on itself and other media. You know, finally, people in movies and shows were allowed to acknowledge that media exists without like just worshiping it or promoting it or something, you know. And Tarantino was one of the directors who got big during this time. You know, this was around the same. This was the same decade that, you know, Wes Craven, you know, gave us the postmodern slasher in Scream. You know, for the horror, you know, crowd, which I'm very much a part of. Love those movies. Less so the third one. It was also the same decade that Kevin Smith, not the guy who played Ares and sadly died, the other Kevin Smith, you know, he, yeah, gave us just like average Joes just fucking talking pop culture, you know, discussing Star Wars and shit. For, you know, yeah, the people just working at the job they hated and just wanted to try to get through the day. And Tarantino was doing that for crime movies, you know, and yeah, like it genuinely was like there's amazing crime movies that were made before. What Tarantino did was take a lot of the elements that could still work that we just hadn't really seen in a while and like some of it, you know, there's a couple of things where he just straight references, you know, but other things he'll take and he'll give like a 90s, you know, new coat of paint on it that really fits that decade. And yeah, like people were fucking ready for it, you know. Not everybody, but a lot of people, this was exactly the way to yeah. I think that is it for the general. So yeah, The writing is really solid with, just like, yeah, I think I will, yeah, so the setup, I don't know how much I want to give away before I get into the spoiler section. I'll just say there is a heist, and there is an unusual element for this sort of thing. And yeah, just like this fucking thing, you are hooked from frame one, you know? And yeah, the psychological accuracy is excellent. These are some of the, this gang, this actually, the whoever had to come up with the Danish title, yeah, Reservoir Dogs doesn't sound, if you translate directly to Danish, doesn't sound that good. So they came up with Goon Squad. And you might be thinking, does that really fit? It's not that kind of goon. But these goons, they really have, all of them have personality. Like, this is a movie where even characters that you don't spend very much time with and maybe only see in one particular situation, like, you still really get a sense of who they are as people. And, you're not necessarily going to like them, but, you feel like, I could probably write a fucking essay about, who they are based on what they said, how they said it, when they said it, the kinds of reactions they have to situations and such. And that was, again, something, people used to fucking make movies where, yeah, like, even fairly minor characters had fucking personality, like that. It reminds me of like classic film noir, like, almost a year ago by now, I talked about, Maltese Falcon, for example. Like, you get a sense of who people are, and just, yeah. Yeah, very high level of authenticity and detail. You really feel like these people and these places, and the tone is, there is some cynicism here, which was definitely something certain critics found, that it was too cynical. And that is the thing, the 90s were a cynical decade, and the movies we had reflected that. We were leaving behind the 80s, the me decade. And yeah, like a lot of young people were like, what the fuck? You said everything was going to work out. Like, yeah, people were very cynical. And this is one of the movies, when I rewatch it, when I watched it in the early 2000s, I really did not have very many fucking complaints. I will say, in some ways today, I see what the critics who thought it went too far, how they felt, and some of that is like, with age comes, if not necessarily fucking wisdom, perspective. And I get why that, this is very much a movie made by a young guy for young guys, primarily. And, some film critics are a little bit older, and yeah, they might, if they had been, in their 20s or 30s when they watched this, they might have been like, okay, that's fucking cool, but you get a little older, and I do think Tarantino is one of those writers and directors who did get better at that sort of thing. Some filmmakers will just stick with, if it worked for enough people, they'll keep doing basically the same thing. I would definitely say Tarantino matured, at least somewhat, over the years in the movies, the experiences making movies. And that doesn't mean that this is bad. It's more that there's definitely some immaturity and some youthful energy here that is, I hate to say it because I don't want to sound like a fucking old man yelling at a cloud, yelling for the kids to get off the lawn, but some of it maybe if it had been rained a little in, but that doesn't mean it's not still a fucking amazing movie. What I'm saying is I'm glad that Tarantino did, get more, more perspective as he made more of these. And yeah, the fucking dialogue here, god damn. This is another thing where it really feels like an older movie in some regards, in a good way. Because that was the thing. Like, there was a while there where, like, I love a lot of movies from the 80s. I'm not saying, Tarantino didn't change it for absolutely everyone. There were still, like, I would say, a bunch of teen-oriented movies from the 90s. Watched a lot of those, some of those terrible dialogue, But, yeah, like, there had been a while where dialogue wasn't really so much of a priority necessarily. Like, the way that it used to be, which in part also I respect. Like, there was a time where dialogue was the thing that you could do. Like, a movie might not have that much as far as like angles and editing and such because cams were fucking heavy, difficult to move around. Editing you had to do by hand, analog, and yeah, like, so, and for a while, American movies kind of thought of, I mean, a movie, so you mean like a filmed play? Is that what you mean? And plays, were a lot about dialogue, so I do appreciate that. But what Tarantino did was, in addition to bringing back this focus on dialogue, at least for his movies, and some, some chunk of the ones that were inspired by him, I would definitely also say, some of Guy Ritchie's dialogue, certainly, really compelling, Brits are really fucking good with words, but yeah, Tarantino brought it back for his movies and others, and also had the visual element in a way that, some of the stuff was like stuff you hadn't necessarily been able to do, at least not back when, like, let's say like the 1960s and such, back when like a bunch of movies had like fucking amazing dialogue. But yeah, Tarantino's dialogue, both in writing and delivery, like, it's that thing of, I've seen some suggest that he writes the way people talk. I don't know if I would necessarily say that. I think he writes the way people wish they talked. Like, when you know how if you have an experience and you just need to share it with someone and then you retell the story, you give yourself better dialogue than you could come up with in the spot. That's what Tarantino dialogue feels like, And his movies are not really meant to... I would argue that not a single one of the movies he's made thus far 100% takes place in the real world. There's some heightening going on, And for that, the dialogue works incredibly well. And the fact that there is also some, like, postmodern deconstruction going on, is also a big part of it. But yeah, people in Tarantino movies talk the way we wished we'd talk, and discuss, like, shit we actually, like, there's a fucking reference to the Fantastic Four in this, like, characters will talk about movies and shows they watch, like, stuff that you do with your buddies, which is such a crucial element here, because that's another thing. Like, there was a while where if you're making a crime movie, you gotta make them just, like, the worst of the worst. You cannot have them be relatable, and Tarantino finds a way to make... I don't want to give away exactly. I'll just say some of them are relatable. Some of them are just, like, horrible people that you're like, what the fuck? But you can kind of imagine there might be someone like that out there, and they probably would be doing shit like that and saying this awful stuff that we hear them say, And yeah, it just, they feel like people. And the yeah, there's this sort of intuitive thing going on with the dialogue. And there's these little, every so often someone will ask someone else to repeat something or the like, and that's something that happens in real life. And there's a bunch of movies where dialogue doesn't really allow for that. It's like some writers think that sort of thing doesn't really work in a movie or TV show. And yeah, Tarantino's here to say no, it can fucking work. You just gotta get it right. The direction is solid. Just every step of the way, like, he has us feeling what he wants us to. The good, the bad, the ugly, like, just every step of the way. There is this assuredness, like, this doesn't really feel like a debut. Like, you can tell he watched movies. He knew what he fucking wanted. It just, yeah. The cinematography, there are these wide shots and or long takes, and they're just glorious. Like, he understands and hired a DP that understands, like, you don't have to just do, like, because like a lot of movies, this is something I think the MCU, I don't know, some of them do okay, but a lot of them, it's just too, like, straightforward. And it's not necessary. Like, a lot of the most beloved movies have more daring, striking cinematography, and that's what we get here. There's a lot of, like, it's conventional wisdom will say, no, you gotta stick with this specific, and just a lot of the time it's much more interesting. I'm not saying it's always, cinematography, wide shots and long takes are tools. Tools can be used in the wrong way or at the wrong time. And Tarantino, he's got the whole fucking toolkit, and he understands when to use what. And just, yeah, like, he'll frame things where, like, yeah, the different parts of the frame will show different characters or things, and we can keep track of more, and something might happen at some point in the shot, at some spot within the frame, without it cutting to a close-up or something, and it makes it hit harder with just, and again, like, there's so many movies where they insist on cutting to a close-up, and sometimes that's amazing, but sometimes, yeah, this sort of thing is just, yeah. There are tracking shots. There are shots where you can't see who's talking. You can just see the people who are, like, listening in and like thinking about what's being said and such. And it works so well. The editing is also phenomenal. This has a non-linear timeline, something that Tarantino would, do again in other of his movies, and this is one of the ones where it works the best. It tends to work really well in his movies. This is one of the ones where just, like, yeah. And yeah, like, some of the scenes are actually really short, and just, yeah, they'll make their point and then they'll move on, and it'll cut exactly when it should, never too soon or too late. Stuff is allowed to land. Like, there's things in this where they linger, and you fucking feel it. Like, it gets to you in a really powerful way. Did I mention I've watched this movie, like, at least a dozen times over the years? I had it on DVD for 20 years or something, and yeah, every so often I'll rewatch it, and it just fucking, it gets to you, man. Let's see. The production value is really solid. Like it wasn't like super cheap, but it also wasn't extremely expensive. And yeah, they used the budget really well. It doesn't feel as kind of ultimately slightly low budget as it is. Yeah, they spend the money right. Like the stuff that they put the money towards is stuff that actually shows up on screen. It doesn't feel like someone was paid an inordinate amount of money just to show up. And the set design and locations. 1 second. Phenomenal. Just the some of these places, like you feel like what the texture of the wallpaper would feel like. You feel like you could walk through this place. Like it feels so real, so lived in. Nothing feels like because that's the thing. Like you got to remember when you're dealing with like a set, you might have to make something from scratch. You don't want the audience to realize that's what happened there, because like there are some movies that make amazing use of like just pristine, extremely clean, like sets and such. 2001, the movie, not so much of the year, does an amazing job with that sort of thing. But this is not that kind of movie. Here places need to feel like people actually live and work in these places, even though it might not at all be that. And the location shooting, they find places with so much personality. Like you can tell, like people actually use this space. Like they were here, maybe they were partying, maybe something else, but they like this place. If these walls could talk, you would want them to not inform the police. And the costumes, goddamn, Tarantino, when it is what he seeks to do, can make people look so unbelievably fucking cool. And just yeah, the goons have this like, what's it called, like they dress in these black suits with ties and white shirts and black sunglasses, and it's just, yeah, they look so fucking cool. And everybody else as well. There are other characters, and yeah, you can tell so much about the characters based on set design, locations, costume, also makeup. Yeah, the music, a staple of Tarantino movies is the licensed songs, and this is one of those cases. Like a couple of the songs here referenced on Two and a Half Men, years later. At least one of them appeared in at least one other movie. Let's see, one of them I know from, like, there was this the Ally McBeal Dancing Baby. One of the songs was played in that one. And yet, despite how much I've watched those other things, when I hear one of these songs or just think of a lyric from it or something, this is what I think about. I connect them so strongly to this movie. And yeah, just this idea, like, over the course of the movie, every so often there'll be a song on the radio from the 1970s, and sometimes they're just talking about one of the songs from the 1970s because all of them are listening to it. They have the right age to yeah, they fucking love these songs. And yeah, because we spend so much time around radios, and sometimes it's like added. Sometimes it's not. Fuck. I always fuck it up. I think diegetic. It's not always diegetic. It's not always that characters in the movie are listening to it, but a bunch of the time, yeah, they're listening to the music on the radio, and it provides the soundtrack for the movie, and it just works so fucking well. You know, that was also like 70s amazing decade for music. The sound design is great. The yeah, do I want to give away? I'll just say the stuff that we hear makes the exact right noise. I think that's all I'll say about it. Uh with the characters, one of the things that I haven't already mentioned, I think I've said most of the stuff about the characters. One other thing is like they feel like distinct separate people as well. Like it doesn't feel like any two of them are interchangeable. You know, it's a good, if you're making a movie, it's a good idea. You know, it's essentially an ensemble cast. It's a good idea to try to make them their own separate people and not have any of them feel like, oh well, you could have taken this line of dialogue or this course of action and given to this other character and it would have been, you know, whatever. Or still, you could write this character out. You know, you don't want that. And yeah, somehow it manages. You know, the acting is phenomenal. Just all the way. Like it's no wonder. You know, some of the. Let's see. I believe this was, if not the movie, at least one of the first movies that really put Steve Buscemi on the map, and he had a career, you know, like I guess he is still working. I'm just not really watching his most recent stuff, but I absolutely love, like, he's one of my favorite parts of Desperado, you know, which was also like, yeah, you know, Rodriguez saw, I forget if it was this movie specifically, but he saw one of Buscemi's movies and like wrote a character that's so much for Steve Buscemi that the character is literally called Buscemi. You know, you don't find that out by watching the movie unless you look at the end credits. But yep, that's, and let's see, it was Tim Roth. Let's see, he had made some English movies, you know, being English, obviously. And they were kind of moving away from the kind of movies that he was suited for. So, you know, went to LA, auditioned, got the role here. Again, dude's had a career. And let's see, Harvey Keitel, already known face. But yeah, like, he got to look at the script and contacted Tarantino. It was like, I'd like to, you know, I'd like to both act and produce, if that would be okay, you know. And Tarantino was like, gee, let me think. Just like, holy shit. And it's no wonder, you know, he read the script and he was like, this is fucking gold, you know. Yep, eye for quality. Let's see. Yeah. Let's see. I forget if any of the others were like brand new names. I believe Lawrence Tierney had been in other stuff, and Tarantino wanted to bring him back, which, you know, with several of his movies, yeah, he was like, I really liked this actor back in the day. Let's cast them in something, and reignited their career. I forget if that happened for Tierney, but, you know, Tarantino himself appears in it, of course. This is one where some of them he gives himself a little bit too much dialogue, and he's not the best actor in the world. Here, it's not really an issue. Yeah, he does fine here. Um, I let's see. Yeah, I don't recall, like, I don't think I've seen Chris Penn in an awful lot else, but he's also great here, and you know, he does in some ways take after his brother, or at least in this, in some of his performance here. Let's see, I guess that does, yeah, uh, Michael Madsen, uh, yeah, amazing, one of the best parts, like, when he, like, furrows his brow, like, fuck, he looks so goddamn cool. Like, I I doubt it is possible to count the number of guys who have practiced that in the mirror, tried to imitate that, you know, and the little smile he does, and just, yeah, fucking amazing. And this is probably my favorite performance of his, and he has done some amazing work elsewhere as well. And yeah, several of the aforementioned Tarantino cast in later movies. You know, he brought him back because they were amazing, and they were amazing in what he brought them back for. And right, and I do also want to note, Steve Buscemi said in like an interview, I'm pretty sure it was him, the movie at the very start, the characters are, you know, yeah, the you know, the opening credits basically, you know, lists the names of the cast members. And what Tarantino did, and this is something, you know, yeah, there's a lot of movies that don't do this, and it is like, I wish more movies would do it. I appreciate it doesn't work for every movie. I think it should be done with every movie that it does work, you know? Blues Brothers does it as well. I forget, did Predator... I feel like Predator 1 did as well. Or wait, or were the names not there, but the actor... I forget, but yeah. You know, when you see one of the actors on screen during the opening when it lists names, yeah, the actor's name will be paired with a visual of the actor, and I believe it was Buscemi who noted that actually really fucking helps, because there's a lot of people who will be like, oh, you know, I really like that actor, but they have no fucking clue what the name of the actor is, you know, so they don't, yeah, the actor has a harder time getting cast because nobody fucking knows. Nobody puts the name to the face, you know? Let's see. I think that does... Yeah, so I've seen some people refer to this as an action movie. I think thriller is more appropriate. It is extremely tense. Yeah, the pacing is fucking unbelievable. When there's a while between two viewings for me of this movie, I forget. It's like, if you don't count the end credits, 92 minutes or something. Like, I always think it's 15 or 20 minutes longer than that because there's so much fucking here. And it's just that some of the scenes are so short and there's so much there that they feel like that must be a longer scene, right? You know, but ultimately the running time of those scenes is short because they make their point and then you move on, you know? And just, yeah, like it never really lets up. Like, okay, the very, very start is just, you know, you see the characters talking and, you know, they're just enjoying themselves. But very soon after, something major happens, and basically for the rest of the movie, there's tension throughout, you know, and so much of it is people talking and like the implication that something might happen more than there's necessarily like constantly something happen. Like I said, it's not, I don't know that I would personally quite call it an action movie as much as a thriller with at least one action scene. I'm not giving away if there's more than one. And let's see, yeah, so I think I'll start this next section by talking about the language. I think it's pretty clear by this point in the video. I don't think there's anything wrong with saying fuck or motherfucker or such. I do, in real life, not want people to use slurs. In media, I think it depends a lot on how you use them. And there's certainly, like, this movie, in the dialogue, in addition to the word fuck and motherfucker and such, there are slurs and there are these, like, descriptions of people that are, you know, negative stereotypes and such. There is misogyny and such. And a lot of it is very casual. Like, nobody goes like, whoa, you can't say that. They just, you know, someone says it and nobody bats an eye. And I am not the right person, given that the slurs are not about me. You know, I'm a cishet white dude. I am not the right person to say whether or not this movie does a good job. And to be clear, my evaluation that at least some media can use this sort of thing right, I do base that on what I've heard minorities, say in their evaluation on it. What I will say is the case that could be made, and I'm not saying I'm making it because I don't feel it's my place. The case that could be made for this is that this is that social environment, and we're not really called upon to agree with it because, like, these are not necessarily good people. These are criminals who, like, they're gonna pull off a heist. They're not like, we're not supposed to think of them as role models. Of course, that doesn't necessarily mean that absolutely no one will. And it is that thing of, like, it's a double-edged sword, because at the same time, every so often they'll say something that, like, how are you supposed to not quote that? That's such a fucking cool thing to say. And again, the case would be that Tarantino is not saying that we should be like these people. He's not saying that everything they say is something we should repeat. He's saying these sorts of people might also just, at some points, sometimes, just be like regular dudes, just shooting the shit, talking about, like, among other things, Madonna and Pam Grier, and that is, Pam Grier's mentioned here, and he went on to cast her, and gave her career, real shot in the arm. And I think that is what I'll say for the right. So this does have some violence, and I'm not going to give away exactly how much, and I definitely want to note that some have felt it was excessive and or mishandled. And I think I am going to save my discussion of that for the spoiler section, because I can't really get too much into it without. What I'll say is, if you think the movie is too much for you on the violence front, it's one of those things, if you have to ask, I'm afraid the answer is probably yes. And that might just about cover, let's see, I think, yes, I rate this 8 goons who are, going to do a heist, and we kind of find ourselves going back and forth on whether they're cool or horrifying out of 10. And that brings us to the spoiler section. So from here on out, I'm spoiling fucking everything, and I'm not necessarily gonna only go chronological order. So, if you haven't watched the entire movie, please don't keep watching this video, So, I think the first scene does such a good job of, like, the camera, I mentioned in the review, you don't, for some of the opening scene, you don't see the person talking. The camera is, like, focusing on the others and just kind of giving you a sense of, oh yeah, it's a diner, It's not necessarily special, but you get a sense of place, It feels like, oh, like, a lot of us have been to a diner or two at some point in our lives, and the mundanity of the setting is offset by, like, we do get a sense, even if you go into this not knowing shit about the movie, you do get a sense, there's something here, because, like, did Mr. Blonde just fucking say he was gonna shoot someone? Jesus Christ, And it's like, okay, it seems like he's like fucking, he's just joking, he's shooting the shit, but that's still like, I've been around, bros that, we made like edgy jokes sometimes. None of us ever fucking said, I'm gonna shoot you, so that's kind of intense. And just the way that we get these little clues about characters, obviously fuck Mr. Pink for his philosophy on tipping, which I guess means fuck at least back then Tarantino, because that was apparently his philosophy, which, like, Jesus, fuck, do some goddamn research, Quentin. Like, you make really solid movies, but that was bad fucking take, my dude. But beyond that, Mr. Pink is someone who thinks about things and, like, makes an evaluation that is unemotional, And we see that later. He keeps saying, am I the only one who's a fucking professional? Which, looking at the scoreboard, yeah, I think so. Everybody else gets emotional. He barely ever does, It's mostly, like, others getting emotional, and maybe he'll, like, hit back or something, but yeah. And the, let's see, we have... I do feel a little bit bad for, like, that is the only scene where Mr. Blue has any dialogue, which is apparently why the scene was written, which, like, Jesus Christ, sometimes it's like, oh yeah, let's give that guy some dialogue, and let's write one of the most important fucking scenes in the entire movie, sets up so much, and again, like, the mundanity of it stands in such stark contrast, even during the scene, you get a sense, that's something, and then, like, right after, I'm fucking dying, it's like, Jesus Christ, we met these people, we see that, they can just shoot the shit for the rest of the movie, in the present day scenes, not the flashbacks, but in the present day scenes, they're not shooting the shit. They're, like, at each other's throats and trying to figure out who ratted them out and shit. So it's crucial that we do see, both in that scene and in the flashbacks, but, like I mentioned, it's important that this comes before. It wouldn't have been enough for the flashbacks, unless, I guess it's possible he was thinking of moving one of them. I disagree with that decision, if that was a thought he had in his head. But that's, sometimes fucking, like, John Carpenter, you realize, oh, my movie's running short. I guess I better add one of the best scenes to fucking the fog, It's like, I don't know, I guess I could put, like, the fucking campfire retelling of it's such an amazing scene. It's one of the best scenes. And it was just there. Like, just, yeah. Sometimes it's amazing how they'll just add, yeah. Moving on. Let's see. We have, yeah. Mr. Orange, who, like, it's one of those things, the first time I watched this movie, I had no idea. And then, on rewatch, it's like, when he's talking to the other guys, a lot of the time, he's saying fairly little. He's saying just enough that they don't feel like he's standing out for not saying much, but he's also not, like, constantly, because, like, that is something, we've by now heard about, undercover work. Yeah, you gotta seem like you're part of the group, but don't be, like, too domineering, because they might think, wait, is this guy, because it's one of those things, like, sometimes an undercover cop is, like, trying to get someone to repeat to say out loud the thing they're doing, and it's like, because, like, they're watching The Wire. I mean, wearing a wire, and yeah, like, throughout the entire movie, Mr. Orange, like, every so often, it's like, no, I don't think it's Pam Grier. She was in the movie, and like, other than the commode story, A lot of the time when he's with the others, he's not saying that much, but it's just enough. So just yeah. And that's the thing. Like I did consider saying this in the review, but I don't want people to figure it out who haven't already watched the movie from watching my video. But like, the first time I watched this movie, I was fucking floored that it was Mr. Orange. And then, I showed it to a friend of mine. Dude was floored. Showed it to my dad. He was floored. Showed it to a couple of other people. I have, every single time I've shown this movie to someone, and I guess in total it's got to be at least 4 or 5 people. Every single one of them was like, it's him? Which shows how good of a grasp Tarantino had on it. Because, like, we fucking fall for it just like Mr. White, Because, like, if you actually take a step back, that's the thing. It's crucial that we're involved. Because, like, one of the first things we see about Mr. Orange is he's fucking dying in the back of this car and, like, horrified and all this fucking blood. And so we find ourselves thinking, not even necessarily consciously, it might not be a conscious thought, it might just be this subconscious thing, like, he can't be the rat. The rat doesn't get shot. Like, that wouldn't make any sense, And then we see him get shot, and it's like, oh, right, because, like, obviously, the cop's not going to shoot him. They all know, But, yeah, really, really, such strong handling of that. And other than that, Mr. Orange, in this first scene, like I said, he doesn't say an awful lot. But as soon as Joe comes back, it's like, one of you didn't put in $1. Immediately, he's like, who didn't contribute? Immediately, without hesitation, Mr. Orange is like, oh, that was Mr. Pink. And then there's like, why? And then Mr. Orange starts explaining, because, and we don't think about it. We don't fully realize, but that's, yeah, he's acting like he's back and being debriefed, because we see it later when he's talking to the other guy he's working with, like he's constantly answering questions, so yeah, he's thinking more like that. But at the time, part of it is also just we're caught up in all this, amazing dialogue and these larger than life personalities, so we're not really thinking about, why is he snitching, like, just, and like, part of it is also we're thinking, he thinks Mr. Pink is completely wrong. And what do you do when he's basically calling him out, So just it fucking works. Just, yeah. Let's see. We see that Mr. White also thinks about things and is like, he stands his ground when there is something, as Pink also does, but yeah, right. Also, Mr. Orange also says, I'm convinced. Give me my $1 back. So also showing, he can be convinced to switch sides. Let's see. With White, we also see, if somebody is doing something that he really disapproves of, even if it's fucking Joe, he's gonna be like, you're gonna stop that. You're gonna stop that right fucking now. He takes the book from him. And we see that Joe doesn't like if he can't get to the bottom of something. He can't, like, and you understand Mr. White, because like Joe is just sitting there saying names, and the others are like, what the fuck? Can you not just like do that in your own head? Like, what you're not saying anything that the rest of us need to hear, He can't stand that he can't remember who this person is. And later in the movie, he can't stand that he, it's the as soon as he latches onto the idea that Mr. Orange is the rat, he doesn't let go. Mr. White pulls a fucking gun on him, and he's still like, no, he's the rat. I fucking know it, and I'm gonna fucking shoot him right now. Just, he can't let go, dog with a bone kind of thing, And yeah, also, right there at the start, we already have some conflict between the two. If White really thinks that, Joe is doing something wrong, And you know, with that first scene, like when you watch that first scene for the first time, you don't think, oh, by the end of the movie, these two are gonna fucking shoot each. Well, I get well. Uh, no, I guess it's Eddie that's like, who shot him again? You know, I've heard theories that it was Mr. Pink because he was technically behind. Some have said there's absolutely not. It was definitely not Mr. Pink. I don't know. I feel like he was trying to de-escalate. I You know what? If you believe that it was Mr. Pink that shot Nice Guy Eddie, I'm okay with that. I'm not saying you're wrong. I personally disagree. I think Pink wasn't shooting anyone. I think he just wanted them to stop shooting, and if he starts shooting, he risks them. You know, if he misses, Nice Guy Eddie's gonna plug him too. You know, so yeah, in error instead. Whereas if Nice Guy Eddie just survives, you know, maybe Pink can be like, okay, are we ready to leave now? We have the fucking diamonds, you know. We know that is the stone. And let's see, I think that, okay, so there's definitely, I think that covers those characters very nicely. Then we have Mr. Orange. And yeah, you know, he is very quick to think of violence. You know, he's the first of them to bring up violence, you know, and even like White doesn't even say, you know, well, I could shoot you. He just says, if you shoot me in a dream, you better wake up and apologize, which is such a fucking cool line. Like, yeah, nobody's ever threatened to shoot me. I don't think if they did, I'd be able to say that, even if I'd already watched this movie, but that is such a fucking cool line. Also love we got places all over the place. Right, and apparently she went ahead and settled it. Madonna sent a copy of the CD, I guess. Did we have CDs in '92? I forget. Anyway, the 91, whatever. But yeah, you know, she sent a copy of the CD to him, saying, Quentin, it's about fuck. It's about love, not dicks. Which, like, yeah, you know, and yeah, I think that does bring us to so yeah, Orange. You know, he's also very quick to, you know, as we see here, he will do a lot for Joe. Because again, it's kind of an extreme thing to say. And I don't think he was ever actually serious about it, because like, they're doing a fucking job. Let's be a little professional. But the fact that he, like, you know, because nobody else does, you know, not a single other person, or the married ones for that matter, at that table, even Nice Guy Eddie, suggests, you know, like, everybody else kind of just lets White take the book, which is fair enough, because they were hearing the, you know, out of context names too. Let's see. I think that might just about cover the entire opening scene. Let's see. Is there anything else? Right. I also really love the way that just the conversation, you know, yeah, some of the time they're talking about Madonna, some of the time they're talking about the music they're listening to right now, you know, on KBLE's, you know, Super Sounds of the 70s. And just, yeah, it feels like an actual conversation, like a tightened up, you know, improved real conversation that a bunch of dudes just sitting around would actually have, you know. A bunch of these crime movies, they will only talk about the job, or like say something ominous or threatening or something. But yeah, like at the end of the day, a lot of people like this, you know, I'm not excusing what they do. It's terrible. But yeah, I mean, some of them are just sort of regular people, you know, and in some regards. And that was also something we saw, you know, after this one, we got Heat. That also had, you know, people who were just kind of, you know, when they weren't doing these, you know, terrible crimes, they were just, you know, hanging out and having a more or less normal life. You know, audience, and some of these movies did extremely, or both of these movies did well, you know. They are at least popular. I forget if about money. I think maybe also did well at the box office, but people were ready for this sort of thing, you know. I'm not saying they always would have been, but yeah, I think that does cover the entire opening. So yeah, you know, as soon as they leave, and then we get, you know, first of many amazing pieces of music as they walk in slow mo, and we get the names over, and yeah, they look so unbelievably fucking cool, and then smash cut, and you know, yeah, Orange, you glad I didn't say banana, is dying, and just the contrast is so fucking strong. I think I'm gonna talk some violence at this point in the video. So I've seen some make the case that the movie makes violence look cool, and without a doubt, the aesthetics of it, for sure, the way it's filmed, you know, you have it looking cool. But the thing that's looking cool is like cops being shot, you know, and like shit. I am not okay with that shit happening in real life, you know. I may be ACAB, but I just want them like retrained or like replaced or something. I don't want them fucking dead, you know. But I don't think the movie's asking us to like it so much as it's saying, to these guys it probably feels cool as shit. You know, they feel on top of the world when they shoot cops. Certainly they look like they're enjoying themselves, you know? And it is, you know, I do think the fact that they almost always react to the side of cops with violence, you know, when there's a civilian there, they're not necessarily gonna get violent. They're not. Yeah, they don't necessarily get lethal. You know, like Mr. Pink drags someone out of their car to steal it. You know, yeah. There's the woman who shoots Mr. Orange. You know, but when it's cops, they do immediately start shooting, and I do also appreciate they might say, well, it's self-defense. You know, yeah, but you caused the violence in the first place. You know, there wouldn't have been cops with their guns drawn if you weren't trying to rob a place. You know, yeah, I don't want to sound like I think I'm the final authority on it. I have not studied this anywhere near as extensively as some of the other voices in this debate have. I'm not saying it's necessarily okay. I'm saying I think that's based on the movie and some Tarantino interviews I've heard. I think that's what he was thinking. But like I said in the review itself, you know, he's matured somewhat since this, although some of the time not as much. But you know, yeah, it's one of those things like, yeah, you know, 20 years ago watching this as a teenager, you know, I wasn't, you know, yeah, I watched a bunch of movies that had violence in them, and it didn't always, like, this one got to me more than a lot of others, but it didn't hit as hard for me as it does today, you know. But yeah, you know, a lot of young guys, when they make a movie, if there's no one stopping them, they'll put a lot of violence in the movie and not necessarily handle it in the most, you know, John Carpenter's on the record as saying he regrets, I'm not going to give away what, I won't even say which movie, but one of his movies, you know, yeah, he now regrets the way he handled at least one bit of violence in. Let's see. I think, and I do think the fact that Tarantino's later movies, like, I don't know if he necessarily regrets it. I haven't heard him say he regrets it, but there are certain scenes of violence that he's handled very differently. I think that does pretty well cover that. So, yeah, And right. And one thing I will definitely say, it is a movie that shows, a lot of, not always, the consequences of violence. And we do see clearly, when White shoots two cops in their car, clearly Orange is bothered by that. I think what Tarantino is going for is a live by the sword, die by the sword kind of thing. It's dangerous to be a cop, and if you try to carry out an armed robbery, you might end up dead. I don't think that it's an accident that basically Mr. Pink seems to make it. I must admit I haven't been able to make it out myself, but I've read some try to write out what he shouts, because we do hear some commotion from outside after he runs out with the diamonds, and apparently he yells, "Don't shoot, I've been shot." When really you could have just had some gunfire, and then we hear a cop say, "We got him," or something. So it seems like Mr. Pink survived. He was the one who was the best at not letting his emotions get the better of him. And he's definitely going away. No one in this movie gets away scot-free. And, Mr. Orange spends almost the entire movie, in the almost every second of present day, other than flashbacks, not talking flashbacks, nearly all of the present day scenes is him bleeding out, and by the end, you see his lips, there's no color left, and he's moving slower. The way he talks, he's clearly almost, and he's got the, he's almost as pale as I am on a sunny day, and it's very much consistent, that in this, and I'm not saying that only people who, we are told that hostages were shot who didn't actually do anything. I don't think it's an accident that we don't see that. The only civilian we see shot is the one who shoots Mr. Orange. And I'm not saying it's right, because technically, she was the one trying to defend herself. But when he shoots her, it's after she shoots him. So I'm not making a moral judgment. I'm saying it seems like the movie is conveying that, and you're free to disagree with my read. You're free to say that, maybe you think that it's conveying it extremely poorly. But it seems like it's attempting to convey that when there is a violent situation, even if you are just defending yourself, you yourself might be victim to violence, And let's see, I think that pretty well covers that. So I love that the way it lingers on, how much she's bleeding, and also the fact, and this is also something you mostly realize on rewatch. There's a baby seat in the back of that car. In the back seat where he is, there's a baby seat, and he's kicking it because he's like, I killed a mother. God fucking damn it. This wasn't supposed to happen. And that's the thing. You can't be sure that it'll go the way you hope, no matter how good of an undercover cop you are, because sometimes these things get violent. You even have one of the other cops, we overhear. That's actually, I think, the only time we hear something that no one on the goon squad hears. I'm sorry, it just amuses me that in Danish it's called that, especially now that goon has a very different meaning also. But the cops, one of them says, "Well, there they go. I swear they must have, undercover cops must have rocks in their heads." So even the other cops realize, I don't think this is a good idea, you know? And yeah, I do think that the violence serves a purpose. Whether or not that purpose justifies how much violence we see or how it's depicted, I am not going to try to make some kind of declarative statement on. I don't think that I'm the right person to do that. But what I'm saying, to put a bow on it, I think it is arguing in bad faith when people, and I'm not saying, I don't think I've seen even one professional critic do this, but if you say the violence in Reservoir Dogs serves no purpose, isn't trying to convey any kind of theme or idea, I disagree. And I think it is detrimental to film discussion. You can hate the movie. You can think this is the worst movie ever made. But yeah, you know, I really don't think like, tell you what, I'm willing to, I can 100% appreciate the perspective. If you say, this movie could have done without any of the casual bigotry. You could have had just, you know, yeah, because it's conveyed elsewhere that the characters are not the best people, and some people, you know, yeah, unfortunately, some people did watch this and think, oh, these are cool. I should, you know. I mean, I don't know if anyone was convinced to be a bigot, but I could imagine some bigots were probably like, yes, you know, woke is dead. I guess this is a good time to plug. So Legia Miller and Elliot Sang again did fantastic videos. Elliot Sang again, I want to say it's called Sydney Sweeney and White Ambiguity. Fuck, I forget what my wrists are too bad to look it up right now. I forget what the Legia Miller video was called. I think it was something with eugenics. So if you do a word search for her channel in eugenics, yeah, fantastic videos on the, fucking eugenicsy shit. That Sydney Sweeney ad. I don't know what the fuck. Actually, I do know. That's the... Sometimes I wish I didn't. But yeah, the two of them do a fantastic job discussing it. I don't know why Colbert didn't either. Like, listen, I think if Colbert just hadn't commented on it at all, I feel like that would basically have been fine. But he's like, I don't know if I would say it's eugenics. Really? You don't? You've called out white nationalists before. What the white supremacists before. What the fuck? But anyway, yeah, of course, he just, you know, he says that, then he makes a joke, and then he moves on. I'm not glad he's canceled, but I do think that was fucking terrible coverage. Like, seriously, just don't talk about it if you're gonna dismiss, like, yeah. Moving on. Yes, so the, yeah, if we're talking about, you know, oh, you know, wave a magic wand, change anything at all about the movie, not you know, like fucking monkey's paw, but actually, you know, no, you can just, yeah, I think the movie could work. Yeah, I don't think it is better because of the slurs. I think I get what he was going for. I think it would have been, yeah. Yeah. I think I've made my point. I'm gonna move on. With the violence, I am less sure, because if you do not have the violence in there, then that entire theme is weakened, if not lost entirely. Now, let's see. I think that does cover the, yeah, I love the way that, did I say? I love the way that it lingers on, you know, Orange in the car. You know, he, like, because that's the kind of thing where, you know, a lot of directors would just move on. But we spend, like, several minutes just with him, you know, just terrified of the...
Hi.
Hi. Yeah.
Check noget her.
No, okay, yeah, lige ved at optage. Terrified that he's going to die from being shot in the gut. and White trying to reassure him. And just the fact that it goes on for as long as it does, and we see how much fucking blood is on him, and like, yeah, you spend the movie wondering, is he actually gonna die? Is this like, and it, like with White, it really does make you like how it does for White. It makes us really sympathize with him, and we don't even like, we barely know who he is. Like, we just know the he seems to take issue with Mr. Pink not tipping, but that's the extent, and yeah, just the and it's also one of those things, like, he's shot in the gut and we see he bleeds a lot, and then for a while he's just lying there, and at least one person even asks, is he fucking dead over there? And then suddenly he moves again, and we see just how much blood, and again we see how pale he is by that point. It's because earlier it was said it's going to take forever for you to die from being shot in the gut. And the fact that just, yeah, because we realize, mostly in retrospect, he is like, no more cops are dying today, which also makes it hit that much harder when Nice Guy Eddie just shoots the cop right in front of him, just like that. Let's see. I think that does pretty well get us to. So the the scene gets across. They did the heist, went bad. Which actually, yeah, I think that is, yeah. When we realize there even is a heist, we realize it went wrong. Like, as soon as like you might have inferred from the diner, but other than that, yeah, it's when they talk about, so what went wrong about the heist, and we never actually see the heist, and that's so interesting because, like, yeah, we haven't really, I don't know a movie before this that showed, that had, like, us not seeing the heist. Like, there's other heist movies where, some of the things about this heist movie are also in other heist movies, but that particular thing, at least I don't think there had been before this one. It's possible that there were ones after it. But yeah, there was a heist. It went bad. Orange, is shot, might die, and they're trying to figure out, because, like, very quickly comes up, was there a rat? Is that how the cop? Because they mention, I think the cops were waiting for us. At least some of them. Maybe not the second. The second wave. Those were the ones who responded to the alarm, the silent alarm. But the first ones, they were fucking waiting for us, man. And yeah, like, we're sitting there, we're trying to guess along with them, trying to figure out, because, like, we don't want the bad guys to get away with it, but we're also, like, intrigued by this mystery. Like, who could it be? Because we already met all of them. We met every single participant in the heist already. And now it's like, which one of them could it be? And just the fact that there's only 3 of them there, and it's like, yeah, we kind of discount the idea that it's Orange too. Pink is the only one thinking. We're not thinking. We're actually sitting there thinking, what the fuck, man? He's shot in the stomach, and you're saying, oh, he's like a fucking cop, Like, dude, shut the fuck up, And like, when White, like, starts doing violence against it, like, we don't, like, I'm watching it, I'm thinking, please stop the violence. That's throughout the movie. I personally, I'm not saying that's the same case for everyone, but I find myself thinking, please stop the violence. I don't want this, And with that particular one, it is like, okay, don't get too violent, but get him to shut the fuck up, please. Like, God, what an asshole. And again, like, in real life, I am 100% on the side of violence should always be the last resort, So I'm not saying I would want someone hit in real life in that situation. I'm saying in a movie, with emotions involved and the fact that it is fiction. But yeah, you know, you have the three of them. We're discounting Orange immediately, and like, yeah, we're trying to figure out, could it be Pink? But then would he have gone back and then not like immediately shot White? You know, because like he busts in the door and starts yelling about, holy shit, it went wrong. You know, if he was the rat, would he go in there at all? Especially, you know, not long after he says, I got the fucking diamonds. And then we're like, okay, it can't be that guy. Because if he got the diamonds and he's a rat, he's not going to go in there. He's going to tell the cops, yeah, go in there now, you know. And let's see, yeah, we feel pretty sure it's not White because, like, if it's White and Orange is already dying, why is he trying to keep him alive and reassure him and all this shit? Like, what the fuck does that get him? Like, you know. Let's see. So because that's the thing. Like, once he has him in the car by himself, like, you know, there's shit he could do to finish him off, and nobody would be the wiser, you know. And let's see. I think that pretty well brings us to, yeah, I love that during some of the conversation between Pink and White, you know, there's like some color symbolism in the you know, items that we see in the frame. For some of it, we don't see them in the frame. You know, it's very subversive. I really really love it. And the thing about, you know, the you know, you wanna smoke? No, I quit. Why, you got one? I guess it's true. A smoker's a smoker when the chips are down. And his chips are down. And let's see, the things about yeah, and also, yeah, they mentioned, you know, oh, you know, fucking Mr. Blonde, you know, shit, and we're thinking, oh yeah, he did threaten at the diner, you know. And yeah, now we're thinking, if Blonde shows up, there's gonna be hell to pay, you know. This is not gonna end well, and of course he does, you know. And that's the thing, like, it's one of those things, like, you kind of needed at least some of the goons to die right after the heist for it to be, because, like, otherwise, okay, so there were a bunch of cops waiting right outside, and then a second wave showed up. I'm sorry, at least some of them would have ended up dead, you know. And it's Mr. Shit and Mr. Blue, you know. And the Mr. Shit acting, though it doesn't matter that much in this movie because he doesn't have that many lines, you know. Sometimes that's what works best. That's a hint. And yeah, let's see, we have the fuck, what was the other thing? Yeah, you know, the fact that the two of them die. Blue doesn't even get an on-screen death. And let's see, I guess that brings us to, but yeah, you know, so the conversations and the yeah, the outlining of, you know, what is a psychopath. And let's see, I think that pretty well brings it, but yeah, you know, the scuffle between Pink and White, which is because of, you know, how cold Pink is towards Orange. And let's see, and also the fact that Orange does say, you know, just drop me off at a hospital, fuck prison, I don't want to die. And you know, we realize later, yeah, like at that point he does, you know, he knows he's not going to fucking prison, you know. Like, oh okay, I guess it's not impossible considering he shot her, but you know, other than that. Let's see, I think that does, but yeah, you know, obviously White is thinking, no, you're a career criminal, you know, I don't want you to go to prison, I like you. Let's see, I think that pretty well covers that scene, I think. So let's I guess the next thing is yeah, Mr. Blonde showing up and, you know, just, yeah. the fact that he kidnapped a cop, put him in the trunk, and then he went to fucking, like, I think it is actually Big Kahuna Burger, like they don't mention it, but the colors are right for that. He got a soda, he got a burger, and, ate in the car what did he say, on the way or something, and yeah. And we get the trunk shot, which, Tarantino made a habit of, and I think that is what I'll say for now. Let's see, but yeah, the fact that when Blondie shows up, he is, he says some provocative things rather than simply, he does later explain, I don't like alarm, they didn't do what I told them to do. When Eddie is there, he explains. And there's definitely a thing in this movie about how they behave when they're in the presence of Eddie and or Joe versus when neither of those two characters are present. There is very much this almost like schoolboy kind of quality to them where, if a teacher is present, then they're, somewhat more well-behaved and trying to go along with what the teacher says. But when the teacher's not around, they will do really awful things sometimes and get into conflicts that, it's like at the end of the day, like they don't realize it until, well, yeah, I guess none of them, whatever. It's clear to the audience by the end of the movie, it's Orange, he's the only of the, everybody else is technically on the same side, just not the same page. But yeah, Blonde shows up, and White is actually, he ends up getting emotional. But at first, he is being reasonable. He's pointing out, I can't trust you. I don't know what you're gonna do next. And that doesn't work if, when there's a heist. And, he's laying it out very accurately. And Blonde lets him speak, and then, says, are you gonna bark all day, little doggy? Or are you gonna bite? Which is another super fucking cool line. But I love the way that this movie explores masculinity. I'm not the first person to point out, in this movie, essentially masculinity is a performance. None of them are the, this hyper masculine, He-Man every second. But they often start out that way, and that's where, like, with White and Pink, at first they don't, especially, they're talking about, okay, if someone's in my way, I'm gonna get them out of my way, but I'm not gonna kill someone who I don't have to. That's not so much macho posturing as just like laying out their values and such. But with Blonde, immediately he is posturing, and then White postures back. And, once the it's of course Pink who gets them to calm the fuck down. And as soon as that happens, I think it is in fact Blonde who like chuckles and is like, oh, that was really intense. Because it was a performance, like, it's not that either of them actually want to attack the other, but he feels like his manhood is called into question. How dare you? Like, okay, listen. If you were fucking Joe or even Eddie, I'll hear you out. But don't you fucking dare question what I do. You motherfucker. Who the fuck do you think you are? Like, he practically goes like, taxi driver, you talking to me? Like, it just, and it almost, like, one of them could have ended up dead if not for Pink, like, calming them down. It is a performance, and it is harmful. The movie, and that's something, like, I'm not sure I would say it is always the case in Tarantino's movies, but some of the time, clearly, like, he appreciates, hey, some of this shit gets people fucking killed for no goddamn reason. Like, maybe we should just chill the fuck out, And yeah, in some of his movies, it is specifically because there's someone there to calm things down. Now, let's see yeah, and as soon as is also, it seems like, okay, there's not going to be violence for at least a little while now that, Blonde and White are, okay with each other. I need you cool. Are you cool? Which was apparently something Tarantino actually had to say to it was a Lawrence Tierney, I think. But yeah, we get the either the drunk shot, and they get the cop in there, and they take turns hitting him. At first, they're not even really asking any questions. I mean, okay, he knows what he can probably figure out what question they'd like the answer to, but I do think it is noteworthy. They don't even start by, like, asking him the question and then, like, threatening him. They just start hitting him because they're frustrated and someone's gonna have to fucking pay. Like when Eddie shows up, he points out you can beat him black and blue. He'll tell you started the Chicago fire. That don't make it fucking so. But they just have all this, like, aggression that they have to get out, and also the fact that they hate cops just in general. There's the line about I shot a few cops, so no real people. So that also really tells you where they're at with morally. Again, ACAB, but I do not approve of violence against cops, unless it's the absolute last resort. Self-defense, that sort of thing. Let's see. I think does that pretty well bring us to... I also just love little things like, yeah. Pink keeps, like, he says Mr. Pink is a little too close to Mr. Pussy. And, he, like, he doesn't want to be called Mr. Pink. And every so often, like, there is an ongoing thing of, like, he is the less hypermasculine, the least hypermasculine, other than Orange, obviously. But, yeah, and I don't think it's an accident that he's the one who actually seems to survive at the end, although he's almost definitely going to go to prison. But that's also, like, yeah, I mean, we saw him shoot cops, which were there because he was helping carry out an armed robbery. I don't, I'm a prison abolitionist. I don't, there being some consequence to what he did is appropriate. I do think that is noteworthy. The ones that we specifically see hurt cops, whether shooting or torturing, we see them, or we see or hear them either die or get caught. No one gets away scot-free. I think that pretty well. But anyway, yeah. The thing I wanted to say, he punches Nash in the face, and then is like, "Oh, my fucking hand hurts," which is both funny as a, like, he is at least hypermasculine, but also, like, I've never punched someone in the face. Something that I am pretty happy with that's never happened. I do hear punching someone in the face. Because let's see. I think it's. Is it that you can break bones on the human skull, maybe, or is it, or maybe not even breaking bones, even with less than that? Like, it hurts. It fucking hurts. I hear. So yeah. I mean, I don't think it's an accident that it wasn't Blonde who did that. And in some ways, he's the most hypermasculine, and he's also the one that comes the closest to getting himself killed for no good fucking reason. Like, White might have killed him, because he was already really fucking angry before he comes in. And think about, like, he could literally have just said, "Listen, White, I have a cop in my trunk. We're gonna settle this. We'll find out who the rat is. Okay, you know what? I lost control. Fuck it. I'm sorry. But a lot of men can't say the words, I'm sorry. And it's a huge problem. And I really appreciate, a movie like this going out. Because, like, he got so fucking close. He got extremely close to getting himself hurt. Even though he had, something that they thought might be the solution. It's only when Eddie shows up that they fully give up on trying to get answers out of him. Let's see. I think... Does that pretty well bring us to the... I'm not repeating all the lines I love. IMDb memorable quotes exists for a reason, and we'd be here all day. Let's see. I think... Eddie comes by, and you can tell that he is, he's not Joe, but he does have his shit together. He points out, you're not going to get any information that you can trust out of beating Nash. He doesn't know his name is Nash, but whatever. He says, there's the thing about, okay, Orange is, shot. There's juice all over the floor. I'm going to call someone. And, Keitel is like, you're not calling the wolf, are you? Because in that case, I might actually want a little bit more money for doing this movie. But yeah, he's like, I'll get a doctor here. We never do find out why he shows up without a doctor. He shows up with, they have the diamonds when they come back, but they did not bring doctor to relieve the bellyache. And he points out, we got to do something about all those fucking stolen cars right outside. Because, like one call from like a concerned neighbor to a cop that's like, shit, that's actually pretty close to where that, armed robbery happened. We'll check it out, So, because the cops are already, we realize later the cops are waiting to, close by for Joe to show up. But at that point in the movie, we have no idea. So it's a very logical, thing for him to say. He leaves behind Blonde with, and that's the thing, I haven't gotten to that yet. White says you cannot leave, Blonde here with, Pink, and the thing, so what the fuck happened to you? You agreed with me before. And then Pink is like, I don't know. I mean, he seems okay now, which, that might actually be the one time where he's completely wrong. Well, I guess that underlines the fact that with a psychopath, you really sometimes can't tell. And I do want to acknowledge, I'm not saying that people who are not psychopaths, I know that's the thing about, for a long time, there was all this thing about, narcissists are just the worst people. I think it was Elliot Singh who pointed out a lot of bad things are done by people who are not narcissists, though. Fuck, I forget. Neurotypical, maybe, or something. So yeah. I definitely agree that we should stop, because okay, we get it. Narcissists and psychopaths, sometimes do some really horrible things. Now, what do we do about it? And let's not lose sight of the fact that neurotypicals also do. There's there's a stat that says that mental health people who have mental health problems are more likely to be victims than perpetrators of violence. Oh, shit. Let's see. That brings... But yeah, as soon as they've left the room, and I love that it doesn't cut. It just shows the whole room, nearly, from that angle, whatever. They walk out, door closes, immediately, Blonde was sitting up there, jumps down, goes over to the cop, starts torturing him. Just fucking immediately. Not even a second to just so yeah, he was just waiting. You know, he had no intention of letting that cop live until they came back, and he knows, because like Eddie shoots the cop anyway. He knows as long as Eddie is back, and why wouldn't he be? The next time he sees the others, Eddie's gonna be with them, and he's not gonna be in trouble because Eddie likes him too much, and also, shit. Other than that, hates the cop so much, and yeah, just trusts Blonde. Because like Eddie never says that it would be wrong to burn the cop. I mean, it's gasoline. It smells. You can see the trail on, like, even if you can't see that it's gasoline that he has on him. I can maybe buy that. He just looks wet. Like, I don't know. He dumped a pitcher of water on him because that is, if it's cold, that can be a form of torture. But you can smell when there's that much gasoline. He fucking empties that thing. Shit. I should probably talk some about the flashbacks because there's some important stuff that happens before. Yeah, shit. Okay, fuck. Let's do Blonde's flashbacks because I'm pretty sure they come before he starts torturing. But yeah, so we see him meet back with Joe, and also the thing, Joe's like comforting someone, and he's like, "Oh, I gotta go. I really don't want to talk to you. I mean, a friend just walked in the door. Well, no, seriously, yeah, that's how much, like usually people have to wait. Like we find out later, Orange had to wait 3 days for the call. Wait by the phone for 3 fucking days, which, I mean, I think it might be like, well, if he's an undercover cop, it's less likely that he's willing to wait that long. But if he's like a crook that needs this gig, he's gonna fucking wait, and they maybe need to show him, hey, you're not in charge of the fucking timetable, buddy. Shit happens when we say it happens, how we say it happens. Deal with it or GTFO. And let's see, yeah. So, but yeah, he comes back, talks to them, and you have the thing about, again, the performance of masculinity is explored where, yeah, like he's, they can't just say, I'm glad you're back, I missed you. No, they gotta like throw like a homophobic insults in there. Those I do think were necessary, at least in this scene. I'm not saying, the fuck, I forget. No, yeah. There's other homophobic stuff said by the characters. I do think the fact, because there are so many guys who will resort to like homophobia to like assert, I don't want to like, oh, fuck you or anything, because they can't just say I miss you, because then they think, oh, he'll think I want to fuck him, which is just ridiculous. Obviously men can like other men without wanting, without being romantically interested in men. But yeah, they gotta fight, and there's the, oh, did you see that, daddy? He tried to fuck me, and yeah, and Joe tolerates it for, a little bit, and then he's like, shut the fuck up, let's get to business, and they do. Because it's a performance, they just need to get it out of their system, and he knows that because he could have said shut the fuck up the moment they started, but he realizes, no, this is how it is. They like each other's company, but they can't just say that, so they have to do this instead. And if I don't let them do it now, it's gonna build and build, and it's gonna be even worse later. And we have the whole thing about how they're gonna trick Scagnetti, how they're gonna deal with that situation. And yeah, like the other than, again, just so well written dialogue, we also really get a sense of like Joe, because it's something you don't necessarily think about watching this movie, but like at the end of the day, we don't actually see Joe. Like Joe's apparently like this big criminal, like I don't know, like a kingpin maybe. We don't actually see that much of it ultimately. Like we see him talk to the dogs, the Reservoir Dogs. We see him on the phone with a guy or someone. That's it. We don't see him talk to a bunch of people. There's a lot of crime movies. If someone is supposed to be the big criminal mastermind, we're gonna see a bunch of people, that they deal with, and it's not necessary. And it just, yeah, again, the dialogue, like so much of this, like I don't know if this has ever been attempted to be turned into like a stage play. I think it could. Like seriously, the yeah. So much of it is people talking in these specific like settings. That brings us to the yeah, and also the thing about he says oh you got to deal with Skagnetti while someone else has to deal with because like to him no Blonde's a good guy because he didn't rat them out. That's the thing. Like, I mean, yeah, we're told oh the thing he got arrested for was like stolen merchandise. Yeah, this was not like the heist was not the first time he killed people. He's way too cool and calm afterwards for that to be the case. Even for like a psychopath, he's definitely killed before. A psychopath wouldn't kill that many all at once without any kind of hesitation. Like when you hear about like serial killers and mass, yeah, people who. Okay, fuck. Yeah, I'll acknowledge some mass shooters. The first time they kill, but a lot of them will then like either turn the gun on themselves or they keep shooting until they end up dead or that sort of thing. They're not necessarily gonna right after just be, that calm. Let's see. I mean, I've heard of some where the guy was calm when he was like being arrested or something. Mr. Blonde would not be calm while being arrested, So clearly this is a different situation. He's killed before. I'm sure Joe and Eddie know that, but they like this guy, And I think that does bring the yeah. Let's talk some more about White and Orange. I think it is very big of White to do so much to take care of him. Like he practically carries him into the warehouse, which like again, like he's bleeding. I know a lot of people who would not be comfortable risking getting orange juice directly on their white shirt, but he has a soft spot for him. We see them spend some time together, even at times it's just the two of them, and they get along. In part because both of them are very focused on the facts. They're not super emotional. They really are like solution oriented, and they work hard. They're not, like Joe says, you're spending too much time goofing around. There's a little bit of that with the two of them, but they do genuinely seem like, no, we're gonna fucking do this. This is business. Again, like at the end of the day, Blonde, he might be like, yeah, we'll do this, but he's also not, you can't necessarily 100% trust him in a situation that, yeah. And yeah, Pink is a little bit, the fact that he's in some ways the least hypermasculine of them all makes him a little less, but yeah, White and Orange, they just really get along to the point where, they trust each other, tell each other their first names and just, and yeah, by the end, like, their relationship is so crucial to the film. It's the key. If White had not been emotional about it, if he had not considered Orange above reproach, like there's no way it's him. If he had just stopped and actually, like, because, he says, if you cut off the let's see. Yeah, the what was it? You cut off the pinky. He'll tell you anything you want to know. I mean, I don't approve of it, but he doesn't seem to even consider doing that with Orange because, again, he thinks, no way. He is not under suspicion. He is not Gene Hackman. But yeah, imagine if he had like hypothetically, let's say that he did manage to get the information out of, get the truth out of, if Orange had admitted sooner that he's the rat. They could tell the cops, we have we have two cops here. If you let us go, we'll let them go. I'm not saying it's necessarily going to work out, but it's a different situation. He ends up shooting Joe, getting shot himself, and something happens to Nice Guy Eddie because he won't let go of that trust. He trusts Joe. Joe trusts his gut. He trusts, White trusts Orange more. And yeah, I mean, that is the thing. Some people have tremendous faith in Orange. Trump got a second term and is running the country into the ground. But let's see, I guess that does bring us nicely to, so the, right, and also just the fact that, yeah, to them, he's like, Scagnetti won't even let me leave the halfway house until I get a job. Like, listen, if you genuinely can't find a job, you have my sympathies. That fucking sucks. And that is the situation a lot of people find themselves in. But that's not what he's saying. And I think, let's see, were the 90s okay for getting a job? I mean, as long as he's an ex-con, obviously it's going to be tougher. But, like, he basically says, if I get a job, I can't do the heist. And that's the thing that matters here. So, just, again, that really stands in such stark contrast. Like, there's a lot of people who are going to watch that scene and be like, okay, fuck this guy, seriously. Jesus Christ. Yeah, he wants you to get a job. He wants you to be a productive member of society. Boo fucking who. And it's a testament to the writing and Michael Madsen's acting that, he makes it work. Like, this could easily, like, Jesus Christ. You can see, like, the think pieces about, why don't millennials want to take a job instead of doing heists? Are millennials killing the job industry? And let's see. Yeah, I think that brings us back to, so he gets he jumps off and goes over to Nash. And then we have another great masculinity performance moment with the thing, even your boss said, what? Your boss? Oh, nobody's my boss. Okay, nobody's your boss. Notice that Nash, like, he doesn't feel the need to perform masculinity. And part of that is that he's trying to talk his way out of, he knows what, or he can tell what Blonde has, some of what Blonde has in mind. But Blonde feels the need to assert, nobody's in charge of me. I'm a man. And, it's so fucking pointless. Like, why do you care if this cop that you're admitting you're about to torture to death, why do you give a shit if he thinks that you have a boss or not? It's just empty macho posturing, and that, as that's a major problem. We have so many young men who just don't know how to just be a little bit vulnerable and just be themselves. I saw Dead Domain recently did a video. It was something about. Yeah, I'll just briefly note. So one thing that Jordan made in that video, was that there's not a male loneliness epidemic. There is an epidemic of men who don't know how to socialize, who don't know how to be decent people. And no one wants to be with someone like that, not even as friends. It was a really amazing video. I do not remember the title But it was something about, the thing. Yeah, a women's safe space app was hacked. Something along those lines. And yeah, just like Jesus fucking Christ. There's, the app in question, the T app. The just a place where women can talk to each other about, hey, is this guy safe? And yeah, some of them was like, this guy had, will not tell you that he has an STD and just infect you with it. And the fact that there's even one man, let alone a bunch, let alone some really public figures who are like, oh, these women, how dare they? How dare they not want to catch a fucking STD? Are you fucking... Jordan said it better than I could. But yeah, I mean, that's a thing that women have needed for a long time. There was actually, there's a movie called Amazon... Shit. 1 second. Amazon Women on the Moon. I can see it from here on my shelf. I am seriously considering doing a video on it. No spoilers for the movie. I'll just say there's a sketch in there where there's a thing about a woman finding out some details about her date. And that movie's from like the 70s or something like that. Yeah, it's not a brand new idea. It's just that it was only recently that it was possible to do with tech. And of course, a bunch of misogynists got butthurt and like had to ruin it. Because when women get anything at all that is positive, misogynists have to ruin it. Just, bigotry, brain rot, bigotry in general. That's how it works. They can't stand to see people happy who are in their out group. Like, I'm sorry, but there's something fucking wrong with you. And I want you to get help. If you need to talk to someone to work this out, please do. It is not healthy for you or anyone else. I'm worried about you too. If you genuinely see someone else happy about something that doesn't hurt you or anyone else in any way, and it makes you angry, that is not a healthy way to live your life. Let's see. I think if you're angered by someone else being happy, it should be because the thing they're happy about is horrible. Like, I'm sure Stephen Miller is like cloud 9 these days because of all the fucking deportations. That's bad. And it's, yeah. Let's see. So yeah, he goes up to the cop and, turns on the radio and gets out the razor. And this is a scene that works 100% the way, in my opinion, my experience with the people I've shown it to, the way that Tarantino intended. It is genuinely, it goes from being like, because you're listening to this, music, and like on some level you think he's not actually gonna fucking do it, because that's taking it to another level. The movie hasn't been that brutal up to this point. There's been brutality, but not like, Jesus fucking Christ. That's genuinely so fucked up, And for like a minute or two, we're just listening to this great song, this really catchy, Stuck in the Middle with You, and he's dancing and smiling. And that's another thing, like when you see someone smile and dance, you don't expect violence. You think, oh, this, they're just enjoying themselves. But to him, this is enjoyable, And I gotta say, in my experience, yeah, the scene is not like cool. We're not like going, yeah, fuck him up. We're sitting there like, oh my God, please stop. And then we have the infamous ear. I think that they handle it exactly right. It's the implication is so fucking strong. Like, there's people who've watched this movie who would swear that they saw the cutting of the ear, rather than what we do see is him approach, and he's got the straight razor, then the camera pans away, and again lets us sit with it in this uncomfortable... I think there's maybe a minute where the camera isn't really showing us anything, just the off to the side and up above, but it's just enough time that we can picture him cutting all the way through. And, then it cuts, and then we see, he's holding the ear, and we see, and just fantastic makeup. I fucking love that apparently, like, they got the makeup done, let's see, I forget if it was for free or just at an extremely discounted rate, or something like that, in return for Tarantino writing the script for From Dusk Till Dawn, because that was something that, what's his name again? Shit, I'm sorry, I don't remember his name, but the K in K and B, I'm pretty sure it is. Nope, I'm not gonna try because it's worse if I get it wrong. But I'm deeply impressed by his various work. And right now I can't even remember. Did he write? Did he direct? Did he do both for Wishmaster? Also, really, fond of that one. But yeah, From Dusk Till Dawn, fucking amazing, and yeah, incredible script by Tarantino, and direction by Robert Rodriguez. But yeah, really really solid job on the ear. It genuinely does look like and like obviously in real life, what they did was cover up where the ear is, and probably also put a little makeup on the cheek, like a prosthetic, and to make it look like there's just the wound where the ear used to be, but it looks incredibly convincing, and the camera lingers on his face afterwards for just long enough that it never we never get used to it. That's, I mentioned one of my problems with the two Darkman sequels. We shouldn't get used to looking at something like that, and also over the course of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. But here it never happens. It's just, it keeps being upsetting, even after a dozen viewings, and just, yeah. And knowing exactly how they did it. Like, I know for a fact that they did not cut the fucking ear off a human being, obviously, Let's see. I think that does bring us to the... Shit, what was the next... Right. So yeah, he cuts off the ear and taunts him, with the cut off ear. And... then the camera follows as he walks out to the car and takes the can of gasoline, and just like dousing him in it, and making the trail. And Nash is literally begging for his life, and it doesn't bother Blonde in the slightest. He never, and it's actually apparently when he says, "Please, I'm a father," which is also, so yeah, fuck. By the end of the movie, the baby lost its mother to Mr. Orange, and this, and Nash's kid is also fatherless. Just, yeah. For my peace of mind, I'm gonna hope, I'm gonna, in my mind, he gets an amazing stepdad, and he grows up and has a very happy life nonetheless. Because some step parents can be amazing. But when he says, "I'm a father," that was apparently an ad lib. So I really appreciate it end up in the movie. And Tarantino realized that's fucking gold, man. Jesus Christ. I hope he got a high five after that. I mean, they probably had to untie him first, but but apparently, like, as soon as he said that, like, they had to, Tarantino had to work to get Michael Madsen back into character, because, like, when Madsen heard that, he was like, no, because he was apparently a real sweetheart who doesn't like violence in real life. And apparently, like, I don't think you can hear it on my version, but apparently in some versions of the movie, you can actually hear Tarantino's voice going, "Oh no," as soon as he said, "I'm a father." But yeah, just it's amazing, like, that pairing, that he's actually really against violence. And I mean, he evidently, he didn't hate the experience, because he did multiple, more movies with Tarantino. And Tarantino kept getting great work out of him. I think that might just about be. But yeah, so he's just about to do it, and he holds up the lighter. And yeah, we're sitting there thinking, well, I mean, I don't want to see it, but I guess it's about to happen. And then, gunfire and squibs. I think the use of squibs is the right amount. In general, yeah, that's fuck. I guess I've more or less said what I had to say about the violence. I guess I'll just say, there's some movies where they would have made it more like graphic, like the use of squibs. It's not like fucking Ed 209 RoboCop, it or yeah, other parts of RoboCop for that matter, Um, and another movie I fucking love and will do a review of. Don't worry. Um, Let me know if you want me to make it soon. Let's see. Then we have the I got the whole trilogy, and fuck, I can never remember. I'd like to do the remake as well. I don't know if it's good or not, but it sounds like there are interesting ideas in there at least. Shit. The other thing, yeah. So the use of squibs, I think they, and the amount of blood and such, I think they tend to handle well. But yeah, at first you just have the gunfire, and then the camera reveals it's orange. With the words, "You know what you are, Blondie? You're just a dirty son of a," and then the score cuts him off. But yeah, he shoots, and the camera turns all the way around, and Blonde has staggered all the way back to the wall, and then he like sits down and just falls over dead. And yeah, it's such a great moment because like for so long, Orange has been completely immobile, and yeah, I mean, we've basically discounted him. Again, I've shown this movie to multiple people. None of us thought that, oh, he's going to be rescued by, like, we all sat there thinking, fuck, I hope it'll be over soon, because I don't want to watch Nash burn to death. And yeah, then we have the Nash asking, is how bad is it, which again, like, is so fucking, it really gets to you because, like, of course that's what you're thinking in that situation, and apparently they met, but fuck, what was his name again? Now I don't remember. It wasn't Larry. I'm just gonna go with Orange still. But yeah, they met, and Nash certainly remembers, and yeah. So like this whole time, Nash could easily have said, "Oh, it's that guy, the one you have over there, the one who's bleeding to death." Like, they might not have believed him, but he could have at least tried. He never does, he says, "No, I'm only 8 months into the force and 2 days away from retirement. They don't tell me shit." I think that does bring us to what was the next thing? The yeah, the he's like, look at me, I'm deformed, and Orange is like, I'm fucking dying here, and Nash is like, okay, you know what? I don't want to make this into a competition, but the yeah, you have the right. That's also fuck. As soon as he's like dousing him in gasoline, like, we're also sitting there thinking, that must hurt so fucking much to get into the open wound, and we know some of it gets in there. There's no way it didn't, just, yeah. Let's see. I think that brings us to, so yeah. Orange. We have the, let's see. Yeah. The stuff about meeting him, and the meetings that happened, and yeah, he's full debriefing, and I love the bit where he says, "Make sure you treat, what was it, Long Beach Mike well," and the other guy's like, "Hold on a fucking second. Mike is not your amigo. He rats out his amigos." Because like, and that's the thing, like, that's why this worked, remember? Because Mike is working with the cops. He's not, you don't want him as a friend because he'll tell his friends, oh yeah, this guy, not an undercover cop. No siree, he is trustworthy. And he winks with the wrong eye, but it's okay because it's over the phone. And let's see, yeah, he says, remember the Fantastic Four? Motherfucker looks just like the Thing, which I guess means if they're gonna make a remake, maybe it's Ebon Moss-Backrack who plays Joe. I could see that. That could work. Listen, I'm telling you, my instinct says that Carmy needs to shut the fuck up. But yeah, I think that, and also just that fact that, yeah, he's into Fantastic Four. He's got like at least two, I think posters, or just covers he cut off and hung up there or something. But just, yeah. And the little detail of the ring, he almost forgot to wear the ring, and then he's like, don't worry about it. He has to talk himself down. And also he uses the line about, don't pussy out on me now. He also says that to Nash. Let's see. I think does that pretty well bring us to, yeah. So the commode story, another, one of the best parts of the film. I love the way that, first he's just like, so did you use the commode story? And then it cuts, what the fuck's a commode story? They're in a new location, which also, like, at first, it's one of those things. I know some people say, why didn't he ask that on the way? Well, okay. As soon as the other guy said, use the commode story, he's probably like, no, I haven't. And so he's like, well, we got to fix that right now. I have the script right here. Or maybe it's like, well, we'll meet in a day and I'll have a script for you, something like that. And they'll go to that other place because he needs space to move. And he uses that space so well. I don't know if it's Tarantino's writing or direction. Maybe it's Tim Roth. But the way he paces back and forth and he's like, motherfucker, listen to me. It feels so real. It feels like he's not telling a lie. It feels like he's sharing a memory, and then once he's, talking to them because they're in, this like bar, he's less, he's toned down, but it's still there, there's still some there. But yeah, the way that, it cuts between different locations, different times, he's talking to people, and, talking, he's reciting the script, and at one point he's like, what was the next line? Just such great detail, because it's boring to just immediately show, because like we get to it and we get to it pretty quick. That's another, like, I remember that as taking much longer than it did, but yeah. And he's telling the commode story, and we do see, yeah, it changes a lot over the course of it. He cuts out details that are just not quite necessary and just like streamlines shit. And yeah, I fucking love that when we, a good chunk of the commode story we're actually seeing. We see him go in there, and that's just, something changes. Something just hits different the moment that, the door opens, he's walking into that bathroom, and then, right there, cops, dogs barking, and I've seen enough videos of dogs that I can't help but notice, it's wagging its tail, because it just was, no, we're playing, right? I'll bark, I'll speak, but we're playing, this is fun. Just adorable. I love dogs so much. German Shepherds in particular. Just I dog sat a German Shepherd for a week once. It's just fucking amazing. Just there's love dogs. Anyway, but yeah, he's standing there and they're just staring at him, and I love the bit where he's standing like right in front of them and the camera is turning all the way around. You got to be fucking careful with that, but it fucking works. Fuck, I almost forgot. I think it was the exact right choice to go Scarface with the ear, just imply. I think this movie would have been just way too much if we saw it in detail. I'm not saying it works for no movies. I've watched horror movies that are extremely graphic and where it works incredibly well. Off the top of my head, The Thing, 1982, unbelievably gory. Like, the people were not ready for a movie that gory back then. A lot of people weren't. I fucking love them. The Fly, Videodrome, incredibly graphic movies. I don't think it would have worked here. But yeah, the spin. I'm glad I brought that up because the spin really reminded me of Brian De Palma. Hence Scarface. But yeah, spinning all the way around, and instead of just voiceover, he's standing there saying it. Like, what we're seeing is obviously not what happened. It's like how it's a vibe. It's what it feels like, essentially. He feels like because like when we see the objective camera angle, he never got that close to he's never standing right in front of them and just like looking directly at them. He walked past them. Yeah, and he's standing there explaining it, and just, yeah, fantastic. And then he goes over and just presses the button, and the audio is drowned out, and we just see their faces because he can feel them staring at daggers, staring a hole in his back. And yeah, the commode story did indeed work. Joe's like, fuck, man, I respect that. That's a fucked up situation, but you handled it. And that is, that was the thing that was necessary. He needed to believe, okay, this guy has actually dealt with shit and made it out on to the other side. And we see in the commode story, because we're told, one of the first things we're told is, it's like a joke. You change the detail. You make the details your own. That's how you remember it. And it's very true. That is how jokes work. If you're telling one of the more intricate ones, I can't help but notice that the cops are not just like a passive threat, not just standing there staring at him. They are actively like unpleasant, but not to him. The guys stand there like recounting the story and like thinking it's funny. He like one of the last things we hear him say is, "Stupid fucking citizen didn't realize he was about to be blown away." By that point, Orange has so thoroughly identified with criminals, which it can be difficult to avoid if you're going undercover. This is something we've heard stories about, actual from real life, and had heard about that before this movie came out. The way he's depicting the cop, which he doesn't need to, like, they could have been standing there talking about fucking anything. He could have been saying, like, did you watch the game last night? Because, like, what the fuck do the rest of the Reservoir Dogs care? No, the point is the dog was barking, and he and Orange was worried that they were gonna ask to check the bag. Like, that's the point. But he just can't help but make the cops just, yeah, like, when this movie came out, there was more love for and trust of cops. We had shows like Cops, Law and Order, and shit. Copaganda. I'm not the right person to talk about that. Oh fuck, I don't remember what he's called. Shit. God damn it. But he's made like several videos on Copaganda. I think he has like a Copaganda playlist even. He recently, and he's also talked about the West Wing. He's recently done a video on the West Wing. Shit, I do not remember what his channel name is though. But anyway, in the 90s, for a mainstream audience to hear a cop talk like that about us citizens, was very shocking. Today we know there's like, I guess that story would have been much worse if one of the people in it had been, if the guy had been black, I guess, yeah. The Onion recently did a really great video about how shocking it would be if, a cop actually de-escalated a routine traffic stop with a black driver. Let's see. I think that does bring us to. But yeah, by the end of the movie, yeah, he has so, like he still wants to protect cops, but he hates seeing them hurt. But he really does identify a lot with these. I think it is noteworthy that he does shoot the woman. Like, yeah, I think we have gotten to that. But so right, I'll briefly talk about yeah. Great when he and White are talking about, White is basically checking, did he do his fucking homework? Does he have it all down about the who's where and why? And he does, and that's again why they get along, because yeah, he'll fucking do that. Don't worry about that. Also the various conversations, the car conversation, where he chips in with like pop culture knowledge and such. I don't have much to say. Again, I really don't want to get into the talk about African Americans and such. I will say, yeah, if you hurt a woman, her super gluing your dick to your stomach, I don't know. I mean, I would rather it be resolved in a, with restorative justice. But I'm not going to lie. Yeah, as long as it's in a movie, in Minecraft, I am not watching the fucking Minecraft movie. Sorry, I just want to make that absolutely clear. No. Anyway, as long as it's in a movie, I can appreciate the catharsis of that idea. But yeah, the fact that White talks about, oh, you just cut his pinky off and then threaten to cut off his thumb. That'll do it. I'm hungry. Let's get a taco. He's not put off by the violence. Like, violence should make us sick to our stomach, but he's so used to it. Yeah, and also the Mr. Shit's death, that he's just yeah, the blood, and he's like, I'm blind. No, you're not blind. You just have blood in your eyes. And seconds later, he's dead. Sometimes it goes that fast, and it's sad, even though we don't even actually know that much about him. And again, he was participating in an armed robbery, but we still feel bad. I 100% respect, anyone who says, if it's wrong for the movie to to depict them shooting so many cops, and also we don't actually get to know the cops. We get to know the bank, not bank, yeah, armed robbers. I am absolutely not gonna argue with that. I do think that it could have been handled. You could have just mentioned that they killed cops. We don't have to see it. You could have like them just running away. And if there absolutely has to be gun violence towards cops, maybe just like wound or something, and make it clear that the person's gonna make it. Just yeah. Anyway, I think that does bring us to the yeah, White and Orange run to get a car, and she keeps the gun in her glove compartment, just where the cop said he was about to shoot a stupid fucking citizen for reaching for the glove box, even though because it turned out, no, he was reaching for his license and registration. And that's also, that's part of it. He was like, okay, he shouldn't have reached when you told him not to, but he was trying to do the thing that he knew eventually this cop's going to ask for the license and registration. He's essentially on autopilot, not really thinking. And for that, he almost got shot and then gets laughed at, just, yeah. Because he was trying to do the right thing. Like, imagine, again, to a 90s audience, it was shocking to imagine a cop thinking that way about us. That when we try to do the right thing, if we don't get it exactly right, they're going to mock us. Just, yeah. Laugh about how they almost shot us in the fucking face. But yeah, then we have the, so they run to steal a car. And, Orange was just intending to get her out of there. But how is she supposed to know that? He's got a gun in his hand. His buddy just fired a gunshot. you know. So yeah, she gets out a revolver and you know, pulls the trigger, and right there, just, you know, right in the stomach, Orange is hit with tremendous dose of irony, lethal even, in time, and he shoots. You know, he reacts. He reacts like a criminal would, you know, he shoots to kill. You know, he knows how to do that. We see that with Blonde also, because, you know, chronologically he shoots the woman before he shoots Blonde, but, you know, we saw him because, like, he didn't seem to fucking miss at all, even after losing all that blood. You know, he empties the gun into the torso of Blonde, and if he's that good a shot, he could have, you know, shot for the arm, for example. Like, you cannot fire a gun with an arm that has just been hit with a bullet. You know, she's gonna drop the gun. They can drag her out. She can get medical attention. But he shot to kill because by this point he thinks so much like one of these criminals. You know, because that's what any of the others would have done. Shit, she's got a gun. She shot me. I'm gonna shoot her. You know, so yeah, it's such a powerful moment, and I do appreciate. I don't think I'm the right person to talk about. I think I'll try to talk some about how he, because this one doesn't really depict women much at all. Like, women are talked about, but the only one we see is the one who shoots Tim Roth, who was apparently his dialect coach, and he insisted that she take that role because she was really hard on him and he wanted to shoot her in the movie. Yeah. Yeah, obviously it's not wonderful that that's the only depiction of, you know, that's the only woman. She doesn't even have a line either. Yeah. Yeah, I'll because that's the thing. Like, some would say that it's not misogynist. It's showing that this is a world where there aren't really women, or they don't really get to play a role. You know, it's like with, you know, some say that American Psycho, the first movie, is misogynist. And I'm obviously not saying that the fact that it was written and directed by women means that it can't possibly be misogynist, but I do think that if you really analyze it, you know, I mean, it is saying something. It's saying that this is a very misogynistic world, you know. But yeah, the I don't think I'm the right person to make the final say on if it is misogynist or not. I really fucking hope he's not a bigot in real life. Tarantino, I mean. But yeah. With that, we are back to the warehouse, their house, and yeah, Eddie comes in, and yeah, we get the details about Blonde, and he just shoots the cop, which is so fucking. Orange just fucking saved his life, and then just Eddie just shoots, but because, yeah, he hates cops, and he's like, you're lying there, saying that you killed one of my fucking friends because of a cop. You know, that's like, yeah, like anathema. You know, it's completely unacceptable. And then, you know, yeah, like, Orange overplays his hand. You know, it is not a credible story. He doesn't know enough about Blonde. You know, he might have been able to make a story about White if necessary, because he knows him well enough, but he didn't really understand Blonde or know the relationship that Blonde had with Joe and Eddie. So yeah, Eddie is certain that that wasn't, you know, that Blonde didn't, and, you know, demands answers, and Joe shows up and says, "Why? It's just going to be another lie." And then he breaks into song, which I thought was very impressive for his age. But um, the entire last bit with the several people pointing guns at each other, and the whole thing could be resolved peacefully if like White is still so certain that Orange isn't lying. He doesn't know Blonde well enough to know that that was a lie, and doesn't really trust him. He's not crying a river over the death of Blonde. He was always more into brunettes anyway, but the what's the word? He still really believes in Orange, and just it really, shit. I think I've said what I had to say about this before, but it's such a. I love that the movie literally ends. All this tension and all this stuff about masculinity being a performance, White trusting Orange implicitly, and us trusting him, and it all comes down to these three people being gripped by their emotions, by this, because like masculinity, one of the aspects is if you really care about a man, you'll stand by him. You'll defend him against false accusations and such, which is unfortunately also weaponized. There are some sexual predators who are getting their buddies to say, no, he's a nice guy. He never did it in front of me, as if that means that it doesn't happen at all. Like, holy shit, you're old enough to have object permanence. But to White, he wouldn't be a man if he didn't defend Orange's honor and now also life, because there is a gun being pointed. Joe feels like as a man, he has to finish what he starts. He has to settle, and Orange fucked this whole thing up for him. He didn't listen to his instincts before. He must be out of his fucking mind, but he's listening to his instincts now. His gut rules over his higher brain functions have basically, it's just his trigger finger and his, his first instinct that are in control now. And Eddie feels like if he doesn't protect his father, he's not a man. And so this conflict, which literally, like, imagine if they just all realized, or if shit. Yeah, there's two ways. It could be resolved by the three of them just having a conversation, or it could be resolved by without all this emotion, or it could be resolved by White accepting that Orange is not the new Black. Is that the right reference? Whatever. I haven't watched that show. I've heard good things though. Anyway, I do like Ruby Rose in other stuff. Anyway, we're gonna move on. It could be resolved without violence, or at least without violence against anyone other than Orange, because everyone in there wants the rat dead. Because the thing is, at that point, like, Mr. White, what the fuck is the alternative? Do you think it was Pink, who easily could have taken you and Orange out, who brought you the fucking diamonds? Do you think it's Eddie? Do you think it's Joe? It's not yourself. Like, it's not Blonde, and like, you really think it was Blue or Mr. Shit? Like, it doesn't seem, but he just won't accept it. Because remember, at that point in the movie, he has accepted there probably is a rat, though. because like there were two groups of cops, and the first one showed up before the alarm would have been able to draw them. So yeah, but he's yeah, masculinity's performance and the search for the rat, and this whole situation of is who's going to walk away with the diamonds? Is anyone going to be okay after the heist went wrong? Because we realized fairly early, let's see, pink, white, orange, blonde, Eddie, and Joe are still alive. It's a I think it is a little bit before we're sure that blue and shit are dead, but you know, yeah. So we spend a lot of the movie trying to figure out which one is the rat, who's gonna walk away with the diamonds, because there's all these little power games, mind games going on throughout it. Hyper masculine chest thumping and shit, and yeah, it all comes down to White putting his life on the line to save Orange, Joe refusing to not shoot Orange, and Eddie refusing to let White live after shooting Joe, and Pink is right there. He even says, "Come on, guys, calm down. We have the diamonds," just to no avail, and yeah, I think it's the perfect way to end it. And that does bring us to the very end, and that's also, I appreciate, it goes in my review. I said it was a cynical film. I did not want to give away, it does technically go, like, parts of it go into nihilism, like all the dead cops, the children losing their birth parents, and the fact that everybody dies by the end, other than Pink, who's gonna go to jail and probably spend the rest of his life there. He shot cops. I believe, killed cops, if I recall. Let's see. I think, yeah. So at the very, very end, Pink grabs the diamonds, runs out, and right. I also really appreciate when we're told, they're just waiting for Joe to show up, which, yeah, makes perfect sense. And I didn't realize it on my first. I didn't foresee it on my first viewing, and everyone I've shown the movie to, when it was their first viewing, they also didn't guess it. It was like, oh, that's why they. Oh, makes perfect sense, because that is the thing. Like, Pink almost immediately says, "Why aren't there any cops here?" Is because, like, there's definitely a rat. So it would make sense for them to know about this place, but there's not a single cop in here. Present company excluded. And just, yeah, by the end, yeah, White has already been shot and might die soon. Orange is barely holding on. And there are people, including people I've shown it to, who question Orange telling White the truth. And it's one of those things, Tarantino himself has gone so far as to say, if you even ask that question, it means you didn't understand the movie. And I don't know if I want to go that far, but I'm not stopping much short of it. Like, I'm hitting the brakes, but not that hard, because, like, yeah, I'm sorry, that's a really major element. And don't get me wrong, I get, like, one of the people I showed it to, said that, and, I explained the following, and they were like, oh, okay, right. Because the thing is, our immediate thought might be, and that's where, it's important to really think more about these things instead of just relying on the first thing that pops into our head. But, you know, the first thought might be, that's not very tactical of him. He's been very tactical up to this point. Why would Orange tell him? All he has to do is wait. I saw somewhere, maybe IMDb trivia or something, someone said, if he waited 60 seconds and didn't tell Mr. White, that would absolutely cover it. But would he be able to live with himself? Because again, masculinity is a performance. Would he feel like a man ever again? Because, like, hypothetically, maybe, if the cops are right outside, ambulance, they might be able to save him. I could see that. There might be some long-term, like, physical effects, but his life itself might be saved. He could live, he's like 20 or something. He could live, like, he could die an old man, die of old age. But would there be a single second of that time where he didn't feel like he did wrong by White? And yeah, I think it was Tarantino who said something like, it's a question of honor, and yeah, like, it's, by that point, he so thoroughly sympathizes with perhaps not every single one of these Reservoir Dogs, but at the very least, White. Larry White. And yeah, like, he knows what it means, but he has to tell him. He can't not. He can't, yeah. I think it's a crucial moment. And also the fact that, White immediately shoots him, even as the cops are right there. There's only, I've never been 100% sure, but isn't one of the cops the guy from the story? Because I think he uses a very similar phrasing. Like, he says something like, "I will shoot you in the face," something like that. I don't know why I made him that Southern, but yeah. Well, I know why. But yeah, if Larry is going to shoot him, it has to be right then and there. And he knows it's going to mean his own death. There's some chance that if he puts down the gun instead of shooting Orange, they're going to just arrest him. They might not kill him. And again, like, they might be able to save his life. He might, he'd go to jail, but still, some people would say it's preferable to dying, relatively young age, But he also feels like he wouldn't be a man if he didn't settle this. Because he was betrayed. He put his trust and faith in someone. It ended up fucking up this whole thing. Because, like, there's a version of this film where White accepts that Orange is, one of the, yeah. When yeah. So let's see. When Eddie shows up, they shoot Nash, they shoot Orange, they all get in cars, they go to meet Joe, and the cops have no idea where to go. Well, I guess, let's see, shit, could they follow the cars? We're gonna pretend like I didn't realize that. Let's say, they might be able to get away, or at least have a chance, but White feels like, yeah, I mean, technically he was betrayed. He doesn't just feel betrayed. It's just one of those things where, well, you're killing people, you're killing cops, so who are people, obviously. But yeah, he did all this. He's been saying that Orange is innocent this whole time, and then he finds out, no, he's guilty, and he could have said that. He could have told him in the car after he got shot, so White could have dumped him on the sidewalk or something and driven off, called the others and said, "Hey, the safe house is blown." You know. Yeah, there you go. That's a version that completely, yeah. Um, let's see. But yeah, that's. I think the movie handles it brilliantly, and it's one of those things where for some of the people I showed the movie to, I did have to briefly explain what I just explained. I do try to take less time to explain shit when I'm talking to people, so they don't have to just sit there and wait for a fucking monologue. Um, and every single one of them understood. They just, because they part of it is also that we want him to live. We don't agree with everything he's done, but we're just like, how many fucking cops are gonna die by the end of this fucking movie? But so we kind of wish that we even realizing, because I do think it would not work anywhere near as well dramaturgically speaking. Like the movie needs to end like that. I 100% respect the. Let's see. I saw one critic quote that said something like, "You don't have to agree, you don't have to like Tarantino's terms, but you have to admit that he succeeds based on them," or something like that. He made the movie he wanted to make. It was not of failure. You can say that it goes too far, but that is on a conceptual level. It's not like just one or two scenes that go too far. It's the movie as a whole. Yeah. Um, but yeah, they're at the end. Orange is like, I'm a cop, and White is like, you gotta be fucking kidding me. And with his dying breath, almost literally, Orange is like, really, I am. Yeah, Mr. White. Yeah, gun violence.